And welcome back to the Christopher Nolan retrospective, lining up for Tenet, which got delayed, but still coming out at the end of July. We're going back through all of Christopher Nolan's movies. We are on the third movie now. Go back and check out episode 1 and 2, Following and Memento. But I am the Adam Hart caster, Dylan Muss. I am joined by the clown prince of podcasts, Travis Snell.
Hello, happy to be talking about some Robin Williams, Al Pacino. Ooh,
Oh yeah. Also joined by the play-by-play, Tyler Briggs.
That is I.
And your friendly neighborhood caster, Kirklin Patzer.
Ayo, that is me.
Yes, I'm excited for this. This is a movie I have never seen before, and we're going to get into it. But a couple plugs first. From me personally, earlier this week on Tuesday, dropped the 4th episode out of Mana. That was a conversation with Kirkland Patzer, one of possibly the longest podcasts I've ever done in my life. It was nearly 4 hours. So if you want 4 hours of video game conversations that go in every direction possible, go check that out. It was a really, really fun episode. So shouts to Kirkland for doing that with me.
Briggs is mad you've not had him guest. He just left.
Yeah, Briggs just peaced out. He's like, I don't care, Dylan. I don't care what you're doing. Travis, what else is there to plug on your end of things?
Well, at this point when this comes out, there will be a Last of Us Part 2 review. So check that out if you want to see a fiery Travis. These guys know they got behind the scenes. So you got that going on. Next week, we actually have a newscast coming back because we had Cyberpunk delayed. We have that Avengers trailer coming out. And there's been some other stuff dropping here and there. So we haven't done some in a while. So we'll be dropping that sometime in a Wednesday, Thursday. Look at social medias because we'll be live on that time. So you can follow us there. I think that's it. We got the Nolan, like you said, Nolan, Tenet got delayed, so hopefully it stays. But if not, then we'll keep you updated.
What is the new date on it?
July 30th, so it's 2 weeks post that. So we'll just be doing this and other stuff. You go check out the network, check out my show Marvel Alliance, still the #1 rated show on the network. So I'll take pride in that until I get beat. Great, DC's close. Last week it was 7 downloads away from beating us, so it's close. It's but check out the network and everything like that. And yeah, I think that's everything. All the links are down below.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to talk about Insomnia here, in Christopher Nolan's third film from 2002. Interestingly enough, he directed it but did not write it. I think I was reading that he maybe did the last draft of it, but for the most part, it's like a remake of another movie. Before we dive into this one, I actually want to hear, because Travis, you were away for the last 2 episodes. So I don't know, just like a quick recap. What are your thoughts on Following Memento leading us into today?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you guys for doing those 2 because I want to be, but life happens sometimes. So yeah, my overall is I think if you're a longtime viewer, you know I love Christopher Nolan. He's my favorite director, and I know it's a weird thing because lots of people always go, "Oh, how can you say that? He's not even made 10 movies." But it's just when a guy has 3 of his movies in your top 10 or top 15, it's kind of hard, right? It's kind of like Tarantino. It's just these 2. Those are always the 2 for me. And with him, with those 2 movies, it's so different to me because it's weird seeing, especially even this movie, seeing these early movies of Nolan on such a small scale because we're so used to Tenet, even Dunkirk, it's massive. But Following is just about this writer. Memento's about this guy who's just trying to figure things out. And it's also weird that along with this movie, I feel like his earlier work is a lot more based on characters that are a little unreliable, that might not be the good guy, where if you look at Inception, Batman, Dunkirk, Interstellar, they're all, this is clearly our hero and they're on a journey. So I like both those movies. I did not rewatch them because I knew I was not going to be on the retro, so I'm going to be rewatch them closer to the movie. But I like them both. Following I've only seen twice, so it's the least I've known, but it's an interesting movie. And Memento's a great film. It's just one of those I think that really put him on the map, and it was to me the preview of this guy's going to do a lot more with time and manipulation, everything like that. So I'm a big fan of Nolan. Anytime Nolan puts out a movie, I'm there day one. And as far as Insomnia, I would say this is, like Dylan said, he did do a final draft on this, but I feel this is kind of like his Jackie Brown, where I like the movie. I don't think it's a bad movie, but it's definitely the one I watched the least because I feel like it's the most formulaic out of all his movies. Even Following Memento, it is just it's a criminal cop drama. I think the differences are the dynamics with Robin Williams, Hilary Swank, and Al Pacino. It's a different approach to a murder mystery, but it's a pretty formulaic good movie. It's always to me surprised me that people saw this and then Warner Brothers gave him Batman. Batman's the next movie after this, which we'll do in a commentary track, so it won't be next for us. But I just always find that it's strange that people watch this at Warner Brothers and this is the guy that's going to direct Batman for us next. It's clearly that just means he had a good pitch when he went in, right? And they really like what he was saying. But I think it's still a good movie. I think it also has a lot to do with the 2 leads, especially Rob Williams. Rob Williams is my favorite comedian actor that does drama, just because he we love that guy, but he's so good at playing a creep in this movie. So
Mhm.
overall, I really like this movie. I'm excited to talk about it, but I think it's definitely lower tier Nolan. Not that I dislike it, but definitely one I've rewatched the least next to Falling. All those other movies I usually watch every few years, but these two I kind of off to the side.
Yeah. Kirkland, what do you think of Insomnia? This is probably your first time watching it, correct?
Yes, I did not know about this movie before we started the retros, and no, overall though, I really really liked it. I thought the performances were fantastic. You know, you got Al Pacino, just phenomenal actor. I really liked Hilary Swank in this too. I thought
Mhm.
she was phenomenal. Just like kind of her, like how you see her in the beginning of the film, how she's just like this like really excited new detective. It seems to like be working with this legend, Will Dormer, and like just kind of some of the changes that happen with her like throughout the movie, and she's not always like with everyone at least like as the movie goes on, but kind of what she's doing on the side in her own little bubble. I don't know, I really liked her in this movie. I definitely agree with what Travis was saying, how it definitely seemed like a generic formulaic detective movie in like a remote location. I thought the interesting difference though was like the usages of the insomnia factor,
Mhm.
where the sun doesn't set and like how it just kind of
Mhm.
like slowly decays Will Dormer, and like his just mental throughout the film. He kind of starts losing it near the end, and I don't know. I just thought that was a really unique factor to throw into a movie like this, and overall, I really liked it. I'll probably watch it again for sure. And yeah, that's it.
So it sounds like you'd recommend it's worth it to go back and watch this one if you're a newer
Yeah,
Nolan fan but haven't
yeah,
seen it.
exactly. I'd say so. Like the thing with like I almost said The Following. We had that issue last time we we did that movie, but just Following. I don't know. It's kind of a. I don't know what it is, but it's just different, and I feel like it's a less enjoyable film than something like Prestige or something like this, where I don't know, like that there is some crazy plot twists. I don't know. I guess Following's kind of the same, but it's different when you have like a black and white movie that just seems like a I don't know, lower budget,
It
just
seems like someone's first movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, like the actors in it, we couldn't, like, I wouldn't be able to name them, right? And
Yeah.
then one of the guys not even an actor anymore. He's like an architect in New York.
Yeah, this is one
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Something though that really caught my eye was like just the usages of like Nolan's way of incorporating something in the beginning of the movie that like later on we get explained at the end of the movie, like when he's cleaning off his shirt, and we don't really
Yeah.
know what that is. I really love that, especially that I've seen like other Nolan films, and it's the same thing that he has in, you know, The Prestige, Memento had that, yeah,
Following
and
even does that too, to a certain
right,
extent.
yeah, yeah. I totally forgot about that one, but yeah. So I loved it, especially being a fan of Nolan. It's just
Mhm.
you really get to see his take or his stamp rather.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so funny before breaks goes that like he didn't, I don't know if it was a studio mandate or what the thing was. It's so funny he didn't really work any of that into any of the Batmans, you know, like those are bigger because I
yeah,
think they're hailed great because there's scope and like, oh, they're a dramatization of comic book movies, but there's not really playing with time or any of that where it's like, oh, there's something in the beginning you have to look for. It's just like, no, Batman's, you know, on a mission. So it is funny that I don't, like I said, I'd love to know what or maybe he just knew like, oh, this isn't the place for me to kind of be weird and kind of be a little, you know, oh, look out for this. So I always find
yeah,
that it's a good point you bring that up, that all those movies do have that, except the three Batman movies are like on their own as like, oh, we don't do that here, you know, as T'Challa says
yeah.
in
Yeah.
Infinity War. So
Yeah. Briggs, what is your take on Insomnia? Also your first viewing, I believe.
Yep. First viewing for sure. Overall, I would say unimpressed.
mm,
I think it partially is just not my kind of movie to some degree. And I feel like no one's going to agree with me here, but I wasn't a huge fan of Al Pacino's performance in this one. I don't
you're
know
not
if I like overall I'm a huge fan of Al Pacino, but
yeah.
for whatever reason, it just felt I don't know, a little like over the top, and like he was playing too hard into that grizzled detective, and that there wasn't really much else going on. Um, but yeah, I think it's very obvious that it wasn't a story that Christopher Nolan wrote. It felt less sort of clear and concise compared to the rest of them. I think there's a lot of there are some good parts with the film as well. I think the cinematography stood out really well. Lots of beautiful landscaping shots, and it does a really good job of sort of um, giving us a very interesting atmosphere that sort of coincides with how the characters themselves view the situation they're in.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I would say overall, it just kind of felt like a generic sort of cop drama film, which generally isn't really my kind of film, but I feel like the execution on this just wasn't up to par with what I have come to expect from Christopher Nolan. And I mean, it is all the way back in 2002. At this point, it's only been 5 years since he did The Following, and
Mm-hmm.
he's got a lot of great things coming after this. And again, he didn't write it, but yeah, it didn't feel remarkable compared to a lot of the basically any other film that I've seen. I will say Robin Williams. I feel like I always sleep on him as an actor. I always see him, and I never, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I always like, oh, Robin Williams is in this, and I don't really think much of it, and then he just gives an absolutely killer performance, and I was like, oh well, he's just like the best thing about this film. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Would you say it's worth it to go back to if you're a new age Nolan fan?
no, I don't think I would.
Solid.
Yeah.
I'll take over next. I as well have not seen this movie before last night. Hadn't even really heard of it before starting the retrospective, and this one was a big surprise for me. I love this movie. I think there's so much here to appreciate. I definitely agree with Kirklin in saying that a lot of this is generic. There is a lot of things that are kind of like tropes of this kind of genre of film, and I definitely agree with that. I think there is some aspects of it that switch up the formula and make it interesting, particularly like I guess just the dynamic between the certain characters and the way a couple things unveil. We'll talk about that some more. And then I think why I loved it so much is just because this genre fits so well with the atmosphere that Nolan developed for this movie. Like it just has this really strong aesthetic to it with like these big landscape shots. A lot of this movie was filmed in BC, like really close to home for us. So I found that particularly interesting. The places that look really familiar to me that are,
Yeah.
just a few kilometers away pretty much. So I thought that was great. And I think it just fits so well with like these kind of like, foggy rivers and these really like dark tones, really fits with the character, and then it mixes so well with what the main character is going through of just not being able to fall asleep in like this place that is always daytime, but it's not really all that bright. It's kind of this weird dichotomy, I guess. And so I thought that just the atmosphere and the tone of this movie was so top notch. And then on top of that, there's a lot in here for me, like cinematography wise, that I really appreciated. I have a couple scenes that I'll bring up as examples that I just thought the way the camera angles were moving, the pan shots, the focus, like the where it focused on the characters, I thought was really interesting and kept me captivated. Even if maybe the dialogue wasn't stellar at all times. Like I think the story is interesting. It is a simple story, but maybe the dialogue isn't as gripping until like Robin Williams really joins the movie, because he's not really in it for like the first half almost,
Yeah.
which is kind of an interesting choice. And obviously he's really important to the story, but he's not really in it until the second half. And then I think, yeah, lastly, I'll say for overall, just the cast I really appreciated, because I obviously know these like three main actors, but I haven't seen tons of their work. I'm just familiar with them. I guess like I'm familiar with their careers, but maybe haven't seen all of their stuff. And like Robin Williams, I can't tell you the last time I've watched a movie with him, so it's just been a long time since I've seen something with him. And then even Al Pacino, like I haven't seen some of his like great movies that make him this like top tier actor. I just haven't seen like he's like Scarface, right, and things like that. I just haven't seen some of those movies, so I feel like it's always nice for me to see a new movie with him, because it just kind of builds up that resume of why he's considered such a great actor. And then Hilary Swank as well. Like I feel like I've only seen her in one or two things, and it's always been like she's a small character, and she is in this movie as well. But I thought I think she was really important to the story, because for a lot of it, she almost plays as like a B storyline to what is actually going on. Obviously, it comes back together and connects at the end. But I found it still really captivating, even though it's like taking you away from what might seem to be like the most interesting part of the movie, I guess I could say. So overall, I love this movie, and I don't know, like I'm not sure. It sounds like I'm probably the most high on it, and I agree that it probably isn't the most special movie. And I think in terms of Christopher Nolan's, it's probably the least unique of his movies. There's a lot of these things like the first half an hour is like, oh, you've seen this movie and many times before.
Yeah.
But I still think it does some really interesting stuff. and I would say is absolutely worth a watch. At least for me, just the fact that it was filmed in our province, so close to us, makes it so interesting to me. So I know I'm sure we have a lot of listeners from Kelowna and the surrounding area. So I think from that perspective, you'll probably find it interesting just to see a movie from Christopher Nolan that's filmed kind of here, because a lot of his movies are very like fantastical in
Yeah.
nature or are in weird places. So I think this is kind of an interesting step back to just like a really simple location. So that's kind of my overall thoughts. Travis, you sort of mentioned yours. Is there anything else you want to mention? Like, do you think this is worth going back to?
I think it is. I think it kind of it depends. If you haven't seen, I think it's worth a watch. I think if you're not a fan of just cop dramas or kind of mirror mysteries in general, if that's not your go-to genre, I'd say you don't have to see it. I think I would recommend it to most people, but not a hard recommend. Like you got to run out and see it right now. It's not like if they've not seen any Nolan movie, I would be like, you got to watch Inception, you got to watch Prestige. This is definitely lower list, but I still throw it out there.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so let's get into this. I think in terms of spoilers, like this movie came out in 2002, so I
Yeah.
think we're well beyond that point. I think you should go back and watch it. Like if you want to really dive into this conversation with us, probably best to watch it yourself. But if not, you could probably just listen anyway. It's a pretty simple movie. Where do you guys want to start with this? Do you want to dive into characters? Do you want to dive into like something specific, the story overall?
I want to start with Pacino because Briggs brought that up and I was going to ask him more, but I'm on the camp where I like Pacino in this movie, but I feel that maybe he's like a tad miscast. I don't know. Like it's tough, right? Because he's playing this character that's supposed to be very like droggy and hasn't had much sleep. But sometimes I'm not sure if that was like Al Pacino playing the role that way, or if it was just like, he's not putting his best foot forward. It's hard to tell. But I like him in the role, but I kind of like you're talking about Hilary Swank or Robin Williams. I like the people around him a bit more. So, and I like his character. As far as the character goes, I like everything that's going on. We talk about all the dynamics, but it's great whether it's relationship with Robin Williams or Hilary Swank, where he doesn't really know if he killed this guy at the end. He's kind of he has no idea anymore. But then also I love that it's kind of like that classic serial killer thing where he's like prepping Hilary Swank to catch him. He's giving her like little pieces of information, little bits here, and whether he's knowingly or in the back of the mind, like a Dexter leaving little things, it's like he's like trying to like set this protege up to like please catch me. So I'm not as hard as Briggs where I didn't like really dislike him, but I am the camp of I don't think it's one of his greater performances. It is one of his last like more docile performances because after Scarface he gets like really loud and he's always yelling in his movies, and they give him one scene where he's yelling at Williams and he's doing his whole like you wanted to fuck her, didn't you? And he's doing that whole thing. But other than that, he's pretty docile in this movie. So Briggs, what more in your thoughts there? Because I was interested when you threw that out.
I think you kind of summed up right when you mentioned cliche. It just felt very much like something that's been done over and over again in these cop dramas, where you've got kind of like the grizzled kind of veteran guy who may or may not have done some questionable stuff in order to, just put the bad guys away, as he says in the film, the ends justify the means. And it just felt like it was a performance that I've probably seen before. It didn't feel like anything original, and it didn't feel like Al Pacino added anything sort of unique to the performance itself. So, as you said, it felt like he was kind of lazy, and it very well may have been part of just like, yes, it is the insomnia getting to him, and that may have played into the performance, but there are definitely scenes where it was hard to get invested in the character itself, I found. I'm not sure. I'd have to watch it again to really look out for it, but it didn't feel particularly convincing. And at one point where they're on the ferry, there's one scene where I was like, oh, this looks so lazy, where he's talking to Finch, and it feels like I don't know, it seems like they're on different sides still. Like he still wants to do the right thing, and Finch is trying to get him to just like let him go, kind of. And then they start mentioning the insomnia, and then he has this really weird scene where he like presses his face up against the pole,
Yeah.
and he's doing like the thing where he's really tired, and he doesn't really know what's going on anymore. But that was just like, oh man, what is going on here? And then all of a sudden after he does that, he starts kind of going on the side of Finch, and it was I would say it wasn't the best performance I've seen.
Yeah,
to put
that's
it
it's
lightly.
interesting because that like I guess like the details that you're like criticizing him for are things that I really appreciated. I like that this is a like very subdued performance because I think the setting of the movie, the tone of it, even the story is like this very simple story in like this really small town off in the middle of nowhere. And
Yeah.
so I guess I wouldn't expect for just like some really I don't know, some like Paul Blart level, like, flying around,
I think
attacking people, doing
that's
crazy stuff.
another extreme on the other end there.
I know. I just saw this like meme video of Paul Blart, so that's what came to
Yeah.
mind.
Imagine if this
but-
movie he had the little like cart like going around like that's how he
Oh,
got
jeez.
everywhere. It would have been it would have
Yeah.
been wild.
But I think what I like that scene you mentioned on the ferry. I really like that. I think cinematography wise, that's really interesting. Just have like this giant pole in between the two characters who are clearly on like opposite sides of things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that it's like I feel like it's hard for me to fully relate to the character in the sense that I don't know what it's like to not sleep for like an entire week of time. And like all he wants to do is fall asleep. And these things where he's like kind of passing off a lot of what Hilary Swank's character, Ellie is her name, I guess I should say that. He's like passing off a lot of comments she's saying. She's asking him about like details and stuff. And he doesn't care. He's just like shooing her to the side. But at the same time, it makes total sense because this guy has like 1% of his attention span left. And he's just
Yeah.
totally tunnel visioning on this guy who's like kind of like blackmailing him and messing with him, and then he's also seeing things, so he's probably not totally sure if he's having these conversations or if he's seeing stuff. And then at the end he's like full blown like seeing cars and stuff. Like it gets a little bit crazier. But I think it's totally fitting that he like would shove her to the side. And I don't know if I agree with Travis that he's trying to push her into like catching him. I just think he just doesn't have it. There's not enough going on in the tank. There's not enough gas in the tank for him to be able to focus on what she's saying. Like he just has one goal in mind, and like he does it in really brute force ways. In that, like that scene when he's kind of interviewing the best friend, and then he just like goes really ham on her, takes her to the dump, and he's just like being a little kind of crazy. But I think it makes sense because it almost feels like he has like a time limit. Obviously, he does in the sense that this guy could like leave or something, but also just this time limit of when is he going to fall asleep, and that feels like what would be the end of his story. Like he would lose, I don't know, he would lose attention. Like he wouldn't be able to follow up on it after that point. So I don't know. It's like this, he's trying to chase something, but he has no energy. I find it like this really interesting dynamic. And it may be like acting wise, like I just don't have many points of reference. Like I've seen him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I don't know what else. Like I could not tell you if I've seen another one of his movies. So for me, it was just like, okay, this is like, I couldn't tell if he was being if he was acting poorly or if this is just like who he is. But for me, it totally worked. I'm curious where you land on this side of things, Kirklin.
Yeah, I've seen him in I haven't seen any Godfathers. I've seen Scarface, obviously Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and like a select other things, but I've always known him as just this very like dramatic actor. And I definitely remember the scene that Briggs mentioned though when he's he's like leaning on the pole. First thing that came to my mind, obviously we're in like the middle of a pandemic. I'm just like, man, the germs that he just collected like in that hole right now. And like
they look like lovers too. Like
yeah,
the way like,
they do.
Like, the way if you saw from the side, they're just like so close. Like they look like they're having an affair and trying not to get caught. It's
Robin
so
Williams is like leaning on the pole as well. They're both just like about to touch. And like there's another scene, I swear it looks like they're like about to kiss. Like they're just so close, but I don't know. It's funny too because obviously like a big theme of this movie is the insomnia, the fact that, and it was, I liked your take on it, Dylan, how it seems like there is like a time limit on it. Like it's all going to go to shit if he falls asleep, and he's just trying to like fight that off. But at the same time, he's like trying to get sleep, but he's just like impossible for him, even though, I don't know, like I took it as maybe he would have been able to sleep, and he's blaming it on the fact that there is no nighttime, so he's just blaming it on that. But even though his room, like there is enough, like there is enough darkness to allow him to sleep. I feel like at that point though, what's that, sir? Oh yeah.
He's trying he's putting all the pillows and everything.
Yeah, like I took it as like the reason why he can't sleep is because he knows what he did to his partner, right? Like that's just yeah, exactly. So it's like a major aspect of it, and I did like that element. But there was a few times I would probably agree with Briggs that it seemed like he wasn't hitting the ball square on, like he was hitting some foul balls, and like it didn't work the best for me like throughout the movie. But I feel like the supporting cast for him like worked a lot for me though. Like Robin Williams, I agree with you guys. He was phenomenal. I think the only thing I've seen him in that wasn't a comedy was Good Will Hunting, and I really liked him in that film.
He's
And
also wonderful in that film.
yeah,
He
and
won an
in
Oscar
this,
for that film.
oh, I didn't know that actually. That's
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. And I found him to just be phenomenal. Like even when he's like telling Will like everything that he did, like he's pretty much committing to the crime. He still thinks that like it was justified, and he's just such a creepy man. Especially me, like I'm watching Hannibal right now. Like there's so many similarities in these films. It's funny because like main character Will, it's like, is he a bad guy or not? Oh, it's like that's the exact same thing that's happening in Hannibal.
He can't sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's
Yeah.
so many similarities, and just like Robin Williams seems like a psychopath throughout this film. Like when he's just like, oh no, like I didn't mean to do it. Like it's the same thing that you did with your partner. And it was cool that weight that he had over him, and how it was really affecting Will Dormer's like decisions and stuff. So I think for the most part, because I liked the film a lot, again, Hilary Swank was phenomenal for me. I really liked her, just like how she admired Will Dormer like from the start of the film, and then later on she's like pretty much disgusted that like it was him that shot his partner, right? And like she didn't want to believe it, and then when she gives him that hug, and like at first I thought she was grabbing his ass, which it was hilarious, but she's like feeling for the 9mm pistol, and she just like was in disbelief. And I really thought that the supporting cast like lifted Al Pacino's performance for me, at least. So again, there was a big factor that he was just falling asleep, so he did look sleepy. And I think it's like the scene when they're in the bar, and he's like, oh, how do you like our beer up here? And he's just like looks so dead, and then they all just like laugh. So there was a few scenes I kind of laughed about. But
I wanted to comment on that. I think why I was maybe so captivated is that there is this strange, like, it's not really a triangle, but this kind of like orbit around. They're all in the same boat in different ways. I love that dynamic between Will and I guess Finch, where as the movie goes on, it really starts like Finch does a really good job of justifying how him and Will are like the exact same. They're in the exact same position, even though the start of the movie feels totally different than that. But then Will is doing some weird, like really weird, like sketchy stuff, and he's not reporting like any of these calls, and he's like totally blowing off Ellie. Like it starts to make like justify him as more of a bad guy, and then you see the parallels between them. And that scene when Finch is describing the night when he killed her, I thought was so well done, just because it's like this quieter, like more reserved conversation, and he's getting a little heated, but it's still pretty calm. But then it just has these quick cuts to like these really loud, quick cuts of the actual act happening. And I thought that was really powerful in terms of like what they did there with the volume and these quick cuts where you can't really see a whole lot. You never really see I can't remember the name of the girl who gets murdered. Like you don't really see her. Yeah, you don't really see her at any point throughout the movie, really. And even in that scene, they kind of hold it like in the shadows and stuff like that. And then on top of that dynamic between the two of them, you have that thing where Ellie is like has caught on to Will. And then I love that moment at the end when she's got the bullet. It's kind of, it's funny. It's like the smoking gun, right? That's like the evidence she needs. Yes, they kind of blow it off earlier in the movie, the other cops at the bar, but things would be different at the end. But then, she's like, okay, I'll just throw this away, and then you're kind of absolved of your sins. And then he like pushes her to not get rid of it, because then she would be making the same mistake that he did. That was the result of him being crazy for the last week or however many days this was. So I just think that, like, as you guys all mentioned, the supporting cast is great. And I just love how all their stories tie back into it as well, and it all kind of comes together at the end. So I think that's why I found it so captivating, is all their stories kind of have some similarities to each other, even though they are very different in terms of like foundation.
Yeah, the dynamics are definitely the strongest part. Like you even just think of like the first time they meet, Robin Williams is coming from such a different perspective, where he thinks what Al Pacino did was an accident, and what in his mind, like Robin Williams, nice upkept guy, he's a writer, seems like he has a good head on his shoulders, right? But he can't distinguish what he did to Kay is not an accident. Like clearly you just killed her. And then to me in the movie, they don't hint at any point that he's using that as an excuse. He just looks like he genuinely thinks that, it was an accident, I just tried to get her to shut up. Where Pacino looks and goes, oh, well, I did kill my partner in an accident, so I'm nothing like this guy, like you were pointing out, Dylan. And then as it goes along, and yeah, he gets fucking nuts. Like the way he goes to Randy's house, like the amount of risk in that operation of going there. And I love the way he plays off where he hides in the shower and then he just walks out, like show up in the crime scene. But it's great because you got those two and then Ellie who are all working on different levels, but the police, they don't want to look at Robin Williams at all. They probably wouldn't want to look at Al Pacino. They're just so focused on just Randy, and that's it. Like even when they were searching the house, they got the gun. Like they bust in there, they look quick. They go, oh, we got the gun. And one of the cops like smiles, and it's one of those things where it just seems like they're all unequipped to deal with this situation. So you have like the adults in the room that are dealing with this, but 2 out of the 3 adults are really messed up, you know. And that's the thing with Pacino. He could like point them in the right direction, but obviously, like they state, like it would kind of. Even then, he's so risky. Where in that room, I love that you don't really get a sense that he's fully on Ron Williams' side for, like, it seems like he's working with him, and then in that room he kind of snaps and he later plays it off as like, oh yeah, I just want to make it look good for them. But really it's like he's still so torn where
there was some truth to it.
Yeah, you can tell he used to be a good cop, and that's why he says to Ellie, like, don't do this, it'll taint you. Like, he used to have morals, and then he did one thing, and it was kind of like a karma thing. He tells a lot to that hotel lady, so good thing she never ratted him out, because man, like, he just is like gives her everything. And I think that's my only one con about, I like the scene where Robin Williams tells him. I just wish it was in person, because I just don't think that character would have done that over the phone. That's always been my hang up of that, where he's so careful, and he has like, what is he called, like the magic card, or what is he refer to as the tape? Like,
no,
I can't remember that in the gun. He's always saying like, oh, it's the trick card. Wild card. Yeah. So like every other time he's out thinking Will, like he's moved the gun. I love that reveal of like, oh, I've heard that he hid it in his heat, whatever. And then Pacino's like, oh no, and he gets out. So I love all those except that one. I just feel like he wouldn't do it over the phone. But other than that, I love it's a great cat and mouse game between those two. And Pacino's always behind. Like he's always in second place.
Mm-hmm, definitely. I guess what do you guys think of the dynamic between Will and the motel owner, I guess you'd call her?
Mm-hmm.
She's not in it a lot, but I thought that scene was, I mean, it was funny, first of all, when he was trying to like put all that stuff like on windows so that he could get some shut eye, and then she comes in and just like turns the light on and it like destroys him, it just stuns him completely. And then she's like taking it down. But then I think that's the scene when they have the conversation, when he talks about how he's fudged evidence before, and he kind of justifies it as he knows what went wrong, and he doesn't maybe feel good about it, but he knows that it was like the right thing to do. But then he sees this as like a totally different case, and he's, I don't know, just like these weird distorted justifications for it. I found it interesting, and I guess I liked that he had these relationships with all these different characters, and the one we had with her was, I don't know, it was so different just because he had like this, he like let his guard down almost when he was with her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, it was that one felt a little unwarranted to me.
I think there could have been another layer on it.
So well, I think there definitely could have been a bit more of like after he tells her everything, and then she says like there are two people who live in Night Mutes, like the people who were born here and the people who come here to get away, and she said she was in the latter there. I think if something along those lines to build up that rapport between the two characters had happened earlier in the film, it would make more sense for him to like finally break down and have her as a confidant near the end, as his sleeper deprivation is just like going crazy on him, and his guard is down and he's less wary about what people are thinking about him, and then he's more like you can kind of understand how and why he kind of just completely lets his guard down to someone who's pretty much a stranger at this point.
Oh yeah.
He just kind of, at that point, he doesn't really care. He just wants to get it off his chest and let whatever happens. So from the Insomnia point of view, it sort of makes sense. But it still feels like there are other people who he would say that to before he says it to her. I would expect him to maybe break down.
But who, right? Because his only
I would think Ellie, honestly.
Yeah, but there's you can't, because the fact that she's a cop just kind of ruins that whole thing. I feel like he can only share this information with someone who I don't know, isn't with the law, at least to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I feel like with her scenes, there always feels like when I watch this movie that there were a few more and they got cut for some reason. Like it
Yeah,
does
I
feel
feel
like
like there's more
yeah, a
kind of
few
Well,
more diners or a few
yeah,
more
I
stuff like
saw
that.
that in the original film. There was like more of a flirtatious relationship between
Yeah.
them, and I guess there was I don't know
yeah,
if there was more screen time allocated to that particular relationship,
yeah,
but I think there was maybe a little bit more to dive into, and what Briggs is saying of like a little bit more justification of why he would let his guard down. And it's not that I mean nowhere in this movie do they really play it up as a flirtatious thing, but I still believed it. Like it worked for me. I think the insomnia aspect of this movie could be the result of like many plot holes, or like could fill in a lot of those plot holes
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it. And
yeah,
obviously for me, it just like kind of worked, and I could see this guy who hasn't slept for 4 or 5 days, just so exhausted he can't
Yeah.
sleep. That maybe he wants some relief, and maybe having this conversation is that relief for him.
yeah,
And to me, like who else would he have that conversation with? I like maybe Finch, I guess. But even
yeah,
then, it's like
definitely.
it makes sense that that's not really a safe environment, especially when this guy's been known to already record what he's saying previously. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I feel like
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I feel like they're definitely. I think I feel like the confession kind of came a little suddenly as well. Like there was a conversation or a scene maybe just before it that kind of built up to him kind of letting all his thoughts out. It felt like it also just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere to some degree. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it just felt very sudden that like she turns the light on and then all of a sudden like almost immediately after there's no sort of conversation leading up to him confessing everything to her, he just sort of just all of a sudden lets it all out.
hmm
Also interesting how she's just on like sleeping in his bed after, and
Yeah.
I was like maybe like as Don said in the original it was more of a flirtatious
yeah,
relationship. Maybe there were cut scenes where they had something going on and that was meant to imply that like they had a more emotional moment where they end up doing the sex
yeah, yeah.
after, and then who knows where it
To
goes
put
from
it
there,
lightly.
but yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
agree to
So
that. I don't think that needed to happen as all. It doesn't
yeah,
really have any impact on the scene. The fact that it like skips forward a bit and she's just like taking a nap. He just grabs his things and leaves.
That's
So
how
I agree.
boring he
That
is.
doesn't
That's how
really.
boring he is. He
Yeah.
put her to sleep. All his confession. Oh, and then I did this and I did
She's
this.
just showing off. She's like, well, I can fall asleep. Check this
Yeah.
out.
yeah.
I
I
think
do want to. Oh,
Oh, the only quick thing I was going to add, the
yeah,
only
go,
reason why I
go
think
for it.
maybe he confides there is maybe he feels whether he's going to get arrested or he's going to do something bad, that maybe this is like his last chance to be free and talk to anybody. Because it seems like
Yeah,
he's maybe come to the conclusion he's just going to kill Robin Williams, and then whatever happens, happens, because he shows up and then he's like, where's LA? And we don't really know why he's there exactly, other than maybe to plant some more evidence. Like he's going to do something bad. So that's the only reason I think I'm kind of fine because it's just kind of that last like confession, and then okay, I'm gonna go
yeah,
do something because like he does die, and maybe he just thinks, well, I might be dead after this, so I want to clear my conscience somehow. And I Kirkland show at the beginning, I like that because I forgot the last time I watched this was a while back, so I like that you constantly saw the blood in the thread, and I thought it was
Mhm.
always referring to Kay, like something happened there, but then it's like, and
yeah,
they edited it that way where you think, oh, this is something Ron Williams did. They talk about the dress, they talk about him cleaning her up, but
hmm
no, this whole time I love the zoom out and it's him and gets him on his sleeve. So yeah, I liked that kind of the like Kirkman talked about earlier, the foreshadowing of the
Mhm.
thread in the sleeve.
yeah.
Mhm.
I wanted to hop on that sort of editing that he did there. I really like how at the start of the film where they're first going through the room and he sees like the photo of her, and in the earlier parts of the film you kind of just see like those super fast clips of Kay just like smiling,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like that trope where it's like a quick flash of her in like her being happy and like this is what we lost, but then as you get the longer cut of that edit you realize it's not her being happy, it's her laughing at Finch. I
Mm.
kind of like
Mhm.
that sort of play on it, in an attempt to like falsely justify Finch's reaction and murdering her. It sort of plays like, oh, like she was just like a happy girl, and like here's like this quick clip of like her in a good place, and this is like this is what we've lost, and then it kind of goes to she treated Finch like, according to Finch's perspective, like very unfairly,
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. And so I like that sort of play on the editing. And then, as you said, just like the way they did like the blood with the threads, and they reveal that to be a Dormer at the end was very well done as well. There's a couple other editing things, but we can. I don't want to get too off topic here, so I'll mention those later.
I mean, I'd be down to talk about some of that. There's a lot of great cinematography in here. I guess one thing with Finch I want to shout out, it's not really a story thing or a character thing necessarily, but they have a chase scene, Will and Finch, on.
Yeah.
It goes for a little bit, and they go to like this, like a log yard, I guess you would call it. I'm not sure what those are called. And I thought that was a really interesting set piece. One, I mean, I just always love that Christopher Nolan had, instead of opting for CGI, which of course would have been different, 2002, but still, I like that he opts for this like just very like visceral, like realistic fight scene or chase scene. I feel like I've never seen chase scene in that kind of environment, and it's such a great idea. There's like this great tension to it. They're kind of slipping around. It's kind of goofy. So I liked it, and I also found it. I was like laughing my ass off during that scene because just the camera angle of Will chasing Finch, and Finch is running away. He's got like this corduroy kind of jacket and like the short brown hair. All I could picture was Kevin McAllister's dad running away in the airport. That's all I saw. So I just thought like this, it just brought me back to Home Alone where Kevin's trying to find his dad, and all you can see, like, it looked the exact same from the back. And then it also turned into like this great tension where Will falls into the water. He gets like launched under the logs, and then it's almost like a saw trap or something where you can hear just these loud bangs of the logs crashing together, and he's just trying to find his way back up. So I thought that was a great chase scene. It was kind of funny, but then it was also just kind of unique and something I haven't really seen before. And then it was just, well edited and made for a nice dynamic chase scene in a movie that really wasn't too action heavy. But I thought that was a good way to amp up the adrenaline for a particular scene.
Even the guns fight at the end, it's pretty tame. It's just a lot of shooting windows, and then the second, like, Pacino like tackles them, and then they just both shoot each other, and that's it. It was clear, like, okay, we spent a lot of money on Pacino and Robin Williams. Keep this to 2 days shooing.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of a budget to it than Following, where they're just we don't want to show anything.
Yeah. Kirklin, did you have something to say about because we were talking about the hotel, and I think I cut you off earlier.
Well, yeah, I was pretty much just like the relationship between the the hotel attendant or whatever and Al Pacino's character.
Rachel is her name according to IMDb.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys pretty much covered everything I was gonna say. Like, I found like he was so tired at that point, and I feel like he was just like a man that was just like collapsing. He was just grabbing at anyone that he would like. I feel like he could have like grabbed literally like a maid and just like confided with her, like, this is what happened, blah blah blah. So I did like I haven't seen her in too much, but I do like that actress. I don't even know what I've seen her in, but I thought
Liar Liar. She plays the mom.
Liar. Yeah, that's right.
She's great.
Good one.
Yeah. She was on ER for years as well.
Yeah, not familiar, but I know her from Liar Liar. But
she also plays Mrs. California in The Office, apparently.
Oh,
Robert California's wife. I forgot about that.
I forgot about that too.
I think.
That's funny. So yeah, I like that relationship. I definitely feel though that there is more scenes that they cut out, especially like when she wakes up like in his bed before he goes out to like have his final battle. I found that a little funny, especially like she's supposed to be working and like, come on, you're just falling asleep in like a random room. Like,
where's Rachel? Oh, she's with that cop.
I mean, how busy is the motel in that town?
There was some guy. There was some locals.
I mean, she was basically the only employee there.
Yeah,
it's her motel. Yeah.
I mean, she was what, taking their orders as well as working the counter. Like, I feel like she's pretty much cleaning the toilets.
That bar was always
she's
every
cleaning
call.
The toilets already.
That bar always had 2 or 3 people though. Like, that's one thing. Maybe the people weren't staying there, but they liked the pub.
Yeah, exactly. They're the locals just coming to wet their whistle.
100%.
But so yeah, like I was okay with their relationship, but I definitely probably would have wanted more scenes with her and him, because I mean he was presumably single, right? It didn't sound like he had a family or anything, so maybe that was like his love interest that they kind of just cut out some scenes, and it probably would have just fleshed out that end, like basically a confession, right? Because that's basically what he's doing, and I would have bought it a little bit little bit more, but it's not too long.
I guess it's like extra, right? Like you don't need
Yeah.
that for the main plot to
No,
wrap up
exactly.
nicely.
But
So.
Yeah.
but you do need that confession, right? You do need him to explain why like the internal investigations going on with him, and like
Yeah.
the significance of him cleaning or trying to get the blood. At first it looked like he was trying to get the blood out, which like I'm like, come on man, you're not gonna get that out, but you're just making it
Yeah.
worse. You're smudging it around. But
Yeah.
there was the purpose there that he was trying to do it for that reason. I thought
What
that
a-
story was really intense too, about him and the child molester there. Like there's a lot there, and it all came out at once, and I felt like that was a heavy reveal moment that I really liked, even though like the setup maybe wasn't the most thought out, but I don't know, it worked for me.
Mhm.
It almost
Yeah.
feels like this is supposed to be a book and he's narrating it, but that's not the thing. So they need somebody that he could,
Yeah.
before we get to the, like you, because without her, if you
Yeah.
take all those scenes out, we don't learn a lot about him, right? If it's just the crime stuff. So like Kirklin said, he needs anybody to talk to. So it feels like, oh, we have this character that's kind of, she's not an exposition character. She's there to listen to the exposition in a way of
Yeah.
like take it all in. But I still enjoy the dynamic. It doesn't like chap my lips enough to be like, I don't like it, but I get what everyone's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to before we move on, I do want to bring up something that I really liked about that scene as well in the hotel room, where it sort of ties in with a couple parts in the film. But as you mentioned earlier, Dylan, the way she turns on the lights, or initially she says it's actually quite like it's actually dark in here, then she turns on the lights and it's like really bright. I really like that the implication that has, along with the quote that Ellie mentions earlier, where it's a good cop can't sleep because he's missing a piece of the puzzle, and a bad cop can't sleep because he's wrestling with his conscience, or something
Mhm.
like that. I probably
Yeah.
paraphrase it.
Mhm.
But it ties in where the whole time you think that he can't sleep because of the light, and that sort of reveals at the end where and you kind of get the hint where it's like, oh, maybe he can't sleep because of his conscience and the light doesn't have a big part of it, and then that kind of brings that full circle where it kind of ties in with the very start of the film, that he can't he actually can't sleep because of the conscience, and maybe because of the things he's done to get people convicted, maybe he isn't that good of a cop.
Mhm.
And he kind of realizes that at the end, and so he wants to push Ellie in the right direction. But also it sort of it helps, it kind of goes in where you feel like he's kind of going on, like life's going on as normal, but then the very first night before he has his restless attempt at sleep, you have at the very start of the film, when they get there, the dinner conversation between Hap and Dormer, where they basically, Hap says he's going to have to talk to the IA guy, and that Dormer is eventually going to be looked into. And I think that sort of the questionable stuff he's done, he kind of realizes at that point that it's starting to catch up to him. And as he realizes it's starting to catch up to him, that's when he starts wrestling with his consciousness. And then that's the first night of no sleep, which then leads to our series of events, which makes the movie. And I really like how just having that light turn on and that quick little moment of kind of clarity that you also give the viewer, where it's like the whole film, when you kind of looking at it in hindsight, it is shot in a fairly dark sort of like, nothing really feels very bright, but it doesn't really feel particularly dark either. But then you kind of realize just how much of an effect that, like, how dark it actually has been the whole time, and you realize that like it feels like it's constantly bright because of it's him kind of trying to put off the fact that he is wrestling with his consciousness, where he doesn't want to admit it to himself that that's the issue, and that he actually might be a bad cop. But then you're kind of it's shoved in your face right at the very end, and then you can kind of think about the whole film under this new kind of lens.
That's well said. I really like that take on
Yeah.
how that affects the story. I think that's totally true, because that's something I was paying attention to. I feel like all Christopher Nolan movies now I go into with like, okay, he loves messing around with time. What's he gonna do in this one? And in Following, it's pretty minimal, just like a couple of like cuts, I guess. And then Memento obviously is all about that. And so going into this, I was kind of curious. And so when the movie was a little bit more, I don't know, simplistic and linear, I was curious how he was going to input that into this movie, and he still kind of does in a way. And I think it's interesting that yes, this is like takes place over like a week or something, and it almost doesn't feel like it as a viewer because we don't have like that day-night cycle, and it
Yeah.
just is this. It really fits that insomnia, this like insanity to it, where it's just like this one very long day, and it really feels like that from the character. That's what the character's struggling with, and it feels like that watching the movie as well. So
Yeah, definitely.
That was the
Yeah.
original title, One Very Long Day, but it they didn't like that. They're like, okay, no. Like, and almost like you mentioned too, like how he feels like he's on a clock. The other thing I feel like it feels like, and whether he's on a clock or the other way I've taken it sometimes is he just wants to get out of there because maybe he feels
Yeah.
like if he gets back home, everything's going to be okay. Which again,
Yeah.
kind of like Briggs was talking about. It's not the light, it's not the area, it's what you did, and it's just that it keeps piling up, right? Because like he has his conscience already because he framed that criminal who was a criminal, but still he wasn't going to prison. He's being investigated now. Now he shot a guy, and he has to do that phone call, which I really like that scene too, because it's just like you think about the dynamics of that he kind of feels that he is responsible. Like he is responsible, like maybe more so than it was a mistake. Maybe it was because he says like, oh, when he got up to him, he was scared of him, so he didn't know at the end of the movie whether he shot him because he couldn't see him or because he was just like, screw this guy, it's going to help all my problems. But then he has to make that phone call, which I really like, and you see Ellie kind of at first watch him make this phone call. So first it's just, oh yeah, he's out of the loop because he's just going through the ringer. And then also, as we talked about, she kind of thinks things are, and like for me, that's why it's tough because when I was talking about him maybe like laying breadcrumbs, there is a version of that where he's not, because at some point at the dinner when they get Ryan and everyone's like all the cops and they're at the bar and she starts questioning about the bullet, he's like, case is over, it doesn't matter, like he shuts her down right away. So that does go against what I'm saying, because he does just kind of get rid of her, like get rid of that idea. But yeah, again, it's there's lots of fun ways you can look at it. That's the one thing where I even feel if it is a smaller kind of scale of me, Christopher Nolan, it's not this big one. It's kind of like Inception, Interstellar. Tenet to me looks like it's going to be a movie where there's multiple angles, maybe not as a bunch of like 3 or 4 characters where they have different dimensions where this, because I feel like there's a bit more personal story instead of being a grander scale. But all his films kind of have that going on. Even I talk about the time issue, that doesn't happen, but in something like The Dark Knight, you look at Batman, Gordon, and Two-Face, they all are trying to solve the crime in Gotham, but they're all going about in a different perspective. And he kind of likes and even then, if you look at Tenet, it might be that way. You have Pattinson and John David Washington. He kind of likes giving multiple angles. Inception, you kind of do get that eventually with Ellen Page, which we'll talk about one day. So it is, even with time, he likes playing with, not everyone's just a clear-cut good guy all the time, or it's not black and white, the issues, which is a thing you like to see.
Yeah, definitely
sure.
makes something unique. I'll bring this up because it's kind of related to, it's a scene with Rachel and with Will at the motel. This is just pure cinematography. I love the way this scene was shot. So I think this is somewhere like around halfway in the movie. It's a bit before the scene we were just talking about. And so it starts out with like just like this panning in shot towards the motel. And then that's like, I guess the scene is like Will is showing up at the motel. So it starts with like this pan in towards the motel. And then you go inside the motel and it's like panning in kind of towards the bar. And then you can see a door off in the distance. So I just thought it was a really nice way of cinematography, like him coming into the scene. And then the camera flips to what her perspective would be like coming out of that door. And then you see him standing at the bar. And then she comes out and they just have a conversation. And then it's really cool the way it's shot because they're just kind of a bit back and forth conversation, 2 cameras, one on each of them. When the camera's on her, it's like she's centered to the right. And then there's like a lamp on her left. And then when it switches to him, he's centered on the left and there's a lamp on his right. And it's just like this really nice symmetrical, I don't know, I guess symmetrical trick that he uses with the camera there that made this. I don't even remember what the conversation was. I was just so like invested in how cool the scene was when it was being shot. But I thought that was really interesting, the way that scene has like this motion to it. Parts of it are told just with the cinematography. And then I don't know if that's supposed to symbolize something, these 2 lamps. I guess there is kind of this thing where it's never dark in this world. I don't know what it is, something like that.
You said that was about halfway through the film?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you a time point, but it's like, yeah, it's one of the scenes when he shows up to the motel and then they're just having a conversation. It might be like somewhere 25% halfway through, somewhere in that ballpark. Try and find it if you want. But I really like the cinematography of that particular shot. I thought that was pretty expert. And like I said, I can't remember what the conversation was during that scene, but I think it was just kind of some small talk, but I really liked the scene itself. And there was a lot of that in this movie, a lot to appreciate. So I wanted to shout that one out.
Yeah, there was just touching upon the cinematography. I really like that alleyway when he finds it's like a dead dog or something or a dead wolf or something, And it's the one that he shoots to get like the different caliber of bullet. I really like that, just like the look of that, because like the lighting of this, again, kind of mystical world where the sun never sets, and it was kind of funny because he just goes to shoot the dog, get the bullet back, and there's literally no one out in town. It's literally a ghost town. But it's like, okay, whatever. But I just love the scene because he goes into the alleyway, and then it flips, basically what you just mentioned, except for this time it's outside, and the way that there's just kind of a puddle, but it's going the entire length of the alleyway, and it's just him. At first he throws up, and then he sees like the dead dog there. I really like that scene for whatever reason. I just thought it was a really, really interesting little scene, just setting to have that scene.
Yeah, that's interesting because that he obviously, you see that point earlier in the movie, and it's just when he's like kind of going crazy, and it's kind of just like this disturbing image, but then it kind of pulls it back into the plot because he thinks he can make something out of this, or make some evidence, if you will. So I like that. And I saw that in the original, I guess in the original movie, original script or something, that dog is, I don't know if it's like a sick dog or something, but the dog is still alive when he shoots it, and I think that would probably fit to make this character like even darker. But I still think so, I think it fits as like this really messed up thing that he's doing, this really kind of gross, I don't know, dark little alleyway. And
see, I think they didn't make it alive because I think as it goes further along, you start to get the sense maybe he's not the greatest guy. But I think in most movies and TVs, most characters don't kill dogs and kids. Those are two, like, if they do that, it's like they're bad people, right? So I think that's probably why they didn't have him do it, because like, oh, well, if he shot a dog, then he's definitely a piece of shit.
It could have been construed as putting it out of his misery, because that's kind of what it seems like in the movie, even though the dog is clearly,
if it's like a rabid dog or something.
I think
but still,
I think for a lot of people, especially in like Western culture, that would have been like a line you just don't cross, and it would have written off the movie for a lot of people. So I think it's fair for them to kind of, especially like if you like just like with our culture,
especially to know like what his motive is.
Massive, unless it's unless it's a like a massive character moment, like in I Am Legend, for example, or even then he doesn't kill the dog. The dog just dies. What am I talking about? Anyways, but like you just, it's kind of taboo to kill something that's like innocent like that. Like as you said, Travis, children or like
dogs that are immune.
Animals, dogs. So I feel like dogs specifically, but like generally just like small kind of cute animals.
Anything that you can have a stuffy of, they don't want that being killed on TV or movies.
Whereas I feel like that taboo isn't so nearly as strong in like, I guess, Norway, for example, as this was supposedly much darker when it in like its original Norwegian.
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things I read about it and that make it quite a bit darker. Really changes the character from what Will is in this movie. So it makes sense. Like, it's a different take on the character. Yes, there's similar plot points or a similar foundation, but they definitely go a different direction with it. Not that I haven't seen that movie, I should say. So this is just based off kind of reading recaps of kind of what the differences are. But yeah, I think it would be hard to justify in this movie because of the motive that is the case for him to actually shoot the dog, right? Like, it's not to put it out of its misery. It's to
cover his own.
Yeah, exactly. Make some like false evidence. So yeah, it definitely would make you instantly hate the character, or most of the audience would feel that way. Yeah. Where to next? I have there's another, I guess, cinematography thing I want to shout out earlier on in the movie when Will and what's the partner's name? Hap, right?
Hap.
Yeah, when they go to I guess question Randy at the school. I just thought that the way that scene was shot was really well done, in that they had like 3 or 4 different camera angles, but they always kept Randy in frame in some way, even if it was just like way off in the distance or something. And then until like the scene like really builds up in intensity when Will like pulls the desk in and is like really going in on him, and that's when Randy kind of he kind of breaks a bit, not really, but it's still, I don't know, I guess that's like a point in the interview that he was building towards. So the scenes like always kind of keeps Randy in mind until Will gets a little bit more intense with his dialogue, and then it like zooms in really close on his face, and then you have like these really close shots of the two of them together. So once again, I thought there was a lot of just good cinematography that makes some of these scenes that maybe didn't have the most snappy or mind-bending dialogue into making them captivating for me. So
Yeah, it did a good
Show.
job of displaying sort of the power dynamic
Mhm.
throughout the interview, whereas you feel like for the most part, as in the scenes where Randy's kind of the center focus, it feels like he's kind of keeping his cool. He kind of has control of the situation, and the interview is kind of everything's going the way he kind of wants it to. But then as soon as Will Dormer sort of pulls him in close and starts popping off on him, um, you get that shift of focus onto Dormer, and you see the power kind of the who's like kind of in control. The interview really shifts in his favor, and then that's kind of when Randy breaks, and Will sort of gets the reaction that he's hoping for.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have one shot. It's not too much to cinematography because it's not like a big setup or anything like that, but I love the reveal. Like the full on after the log chase, you do get Robin Williams look back and you kind of see his face. But I like the initial meeting because it is just like he's out, he's on the boat, he's looking out, and it's just his back. And it's just like as Pacino's walking, we get closer and closer. And then he doesn't turn right away. Pacino just walks right up beside him, and then they kind of switch to like the dual angle of like Pacino's face and Williams' face. But I like that just kind of build up again, and it's one of those like I don't actually think they needed to. I always find it strange watching this movie. They didn't need to show his face for the log thing. I guess that it's to show that Pacino knows who he is, but later on he calls and says, "Let's meet here." So I think that wasn't needed. I also love that line when he's like, "Oh, feed the dogs, they're on a diet," and then he just hangs up on him. Like there's so many times where Robin Williams, you can tell, just feels like this character is very lonely and he just wants anybody to talk or connect with, obviously, and he's using Pacino as that, and Pacino just wants nothing to do with it. Even when he's like, "Oh yeah, that meeting went great, right?" and he gets rid of the tape, and the second it does, Pacino throws him up against the wall. He's like, "You made copies." Like he's starting to think there's some sort of, even too when Ellie is asleep, he's like, "Oh, she's fine, like she's alive, she's just asleep," and he's like, "Ellie," and he's like trying to like, he's always trying to play it like the situation is 10 times easier going than it actually is. So I love that about him.
Yeah.
And the only other scene I have to show that I don't love the take they do when he interviews Kay's friend. I don't love that she's all like, "Ooh, like you want to take me?" So I just don't believe Pacino's has that like that ilk anymore. I think he's a little bit old, but I do love when he gets out, he shows her the dead body, and then he does this many times in his career and then throughout the movie. But like when he's walking away, he's like, "You want to drive, honey? I'll let you drive." You know, and it's just like anytime he'll just have like these weird little lines that I feel like those are not script lines. I feel like that's just Pacino. But yeah, I liked that little part of the dynamic of those. So those are some I had to shout out.
I wanted to comment on one thing you said there. I thought it was, I just kind of thought about this now when you brought it up, but the fact that like their phone calls, they have a few of them in this movie, like probably at least 7 or 8. They all end with one of them hanging up on the other one, like midway through a sentence. I think it's funny that they never, I mean, it's a very weird relationship dynamic they have, of course, but I think it's hilarious that they never like say goodbye, or there's like some definitive ending that I guess there's the one time where Will has like that bit of a monologue and he's like shit talking him and then he just hangs up. But for the most part, it's like always midway through a sentence where he just, nope, hang up when they're trying to like, I don't know, get some more information out of each other. So I thought that was funny. I also thought it was just a little, I don't know how well it worked that there's like this big mystery of, oh, who is the bad guy? And it's like, oh, that's Robin Williams' voice. I know who that is.
Well,
like,
it's weird because they try to take the 7 approach, where 7 they didn't announce that Kevin Spacey was in the movie. You didn't know that till you went in, and then when the movie ends, the first credits like John Doe played by Kevin Spacey. So they kept it a secret the whole time. Studio Kevin Spacey did a zero marketing for the movie, promotional marketing, didn't do any interviews.
That's cool.
So it feels like they wanted that, but the studio, like they're like, "Let's do the 7 thing." They're like, "Yeah," but then last second the studio got cold feet and they're like, "No, we're gonna," and like you said, it is his voice, so it is pretty recognizable. But even then, like his name's in the credits at the beginning of the movie, he's on the poster, so you're already going in like, oh, I do wish there was a way that maybe they distort his voice a little bit or something, because just it is for us as a fourth wall break. Like, you know, it's Robin Williams. There's no twist. The second you meet him, he's like, "Yeah, I killed her, but it was an accident," you know, because at first, the very first things he says, I guess I am wrong. I think the very first phone call he says like, "I'm like you. They're trying to peg this on me." So for like 5 to 30 seconds, you think he might be innocent, but then he goes, "I didn't mean to kill her," and then he starts talking like a creep, and you go, okay, I don't know, he's an unreliable person.
It's interesting that they don't really try to play up this dynamic at all of like who is the killer actually. Like, they obviously, Randy is like potentially a suspect, but that's blown off pretty quickly when they go to this hut out in the forest there. And there's like some guy running away. It's clearly
not Randy.
It's clearly not Randy, and that's clearly the guy that did it. So it's weird that that's not really a part of the story. So that's where like it starts out as a movie you've seen many times, but then it really does take that different shift to it, and it is something different where that's just not really part of the story, and it's fine,
Yeah.
but it is kind of funny how that works out. And I think they did a good job at least of masking the first few times you hear Robin Williams on the phone. Like maybe the first 2 or 3 times, like I couldn't tell it was him, and I feel like when I'm watching movies, I don't generally think of like the meta aspects of it. Like I saw on Plex when I was watching it, I saw that Robin Williams is in it, but I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking about, oh, when's it gonna pop up? When's it gonna pop up? So I think
61 minutes till he pops up too.
yeah,
A full hour. It's
when
a
you
lot.
first see him like in person. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
definitely take their time with it, but I think they did I wonder what it would have been like at the time if this is like you're expecting Robin Williams is going to be like a star of this movie. I mean, he kind of is, but not until the second half. But
And even then, he doesn't have that much screen time. He has a few meetings with Al Pacino. You know, he has the scene at the police, and then the shootout. But the shootout's like it's just like him behind some glass. So he's not. I'd like to see the actual screen time. I know it's somewhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's under half an hour. He doesn't have that much time. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
One thing.
wanted to
Go ahead, Briggs.
No, you keep going, Dylan.
Okay, my thing was quick. I just the music. There was one part in it. At some point, there's like this heroic theme that kind of comes on a few times, and I don't know if you guys noticed this or if
No.
I was
I
crazy.
hardly clued into the soundtrack.
like-
I know there's a couple parts where there's a lot of odd dialogue, and I was very aware that there wasn't any music. But I don't think I really.
Yeah.
There's definitely
the
a scene
audio
where I'm like, is this
lot.
the Avengers theme?
Yes,
and then it, like,
that's
and then it
exactly
cut
it.
off.
That's
I
what I was
literally
gonna
cut off for like
say.
4 seconds,
That's
like
great.
4 seconds of
That's
it, and then it
funny.
kind of tapers off.
Oh
but
my
I'm
Yeah,
like,
there's,
is this
there's
it?
like a 3-note progression that is the
Yeah,
identical to the Avengers theme, and I was
Yeah.
just
Oh my
laughing.
goodness.
And it's kind of weird because it doesn't fit the movie at all. Like it's not this
No,
heroic thing.
not at all.
I wish I wrote down the scene when it first pops in because
Yeah,
it does
me
recur
too.
a couple times. It's like
Yeah.
subtle, but it is in the ending of the movie as well. I'll
Yeah.
go back and try to find it so you guys can go check this out because it's just
I want to.
uncanny
Yeah.
to listen to it. But yeah, the first time it came on, is like, what the hell? This is really
Yeah.
kind of taking me out of it a bit. It's like it doesn't fully, it doesn't fully like, I don't know, hit the end note where it just like is this big heroic theme. It's just like the first 3 notes, but yeah, it's
100%,
definitely
yeah.
the Avengers theme.
So
Obviously, this
funny.
came out
I'm glad you
long before the
mentioned
Avengers.
it because
I'm
I
so
like
glad
in
you
the
noticed it.
moment I like heard it and I'm like, is that it? And then it kind of tapers away. I don't know. I watched it
Yeah.
this morning, so I was probably like eating breakfast. It's like, no, there's no way. And then just kind of move on with the movie. But that's so funny that you mentioned it.
That's amazing. I'm glad you noticed that too. What other notes do you guys? What
Ooh,
other directions you got with this?
I did want to bring up a couple things, kind of with the editing and kind of just screenplay, cinematography, a whole bunch of stuff probably went to do it. I feel like a lot of the editing and a lot of the shots were very interesting. I think there were some things that were done really well that they didn't really return too much in the film, whereas kind of showing Will Dormer's point of view and showing the effects of insomnia. I really like after, I don't know if it's after the first night or second night of insomnia, but he walks into the police station and you have basically him and you see how difficult it is for him to focus on anything, and you have these shots where it's like really loud noise and you have the fan going on and people are just doing things, and then there's those quick shifts in depth perception and focus, I guess is it. You get these really quick shifts in focus where it's like you're hearing something that's kind of in the background and it's focused in the background, and something in the foreground is really blurry, and then it very suddenly shifts to whatever's in the foreground and the background gets all blurry, and then the noises you hear kind of shift along with it, and there's like a couple of quick shots of that which I thought were really well done and did a really good job of sort of adding to how we can kind of imagine what Will Dormer is experiencing through this insomnia. I wish they'd played on that a little bit more. Also, when they do the there's 2 other things that come to mind with that is when he's near the end of the film, when he's on the highway and it's clearly empty, and then all of a sudden he like thinks he sees a truck coming to hit him and he spins out, and then he looks around and there was no truck. And then also when there's that search going on in the woods, and he sees like a random person, and then his mind puts his partner there. I feel like they could have played, if the story was more singularly focused on Al Pacino's character, I think they could have, and I would have liked to see them kind of play off of those effects and sort of being more inside his character's mind and how he's experiencing the world. in that sort of kind of unreliable narrator sense, where it's like we're kind of unraveling the mystery because we're experiencing it through his eyes, and we can't fully understand everything because he is unable to fully grasp everything that's going on around him. I would like to see that played up more. I think it was very underused, as I thought those scenes were really well done. And then also, what was it? I also really liked the log scene where he falls in. It's sort of a good sort of symbolism, I guess, to him being a bad cop and how he does like one little thing, basically, where it's very easy to fall through the logs, and it's very easy to kind of do what he thinks is right and the ends justify the means. But once you fall through, you constantly see these little cracks. It's like, oh, he's gonna get through the surface and keep chasing or whatnot, or he's gonna go back to how he was. But you, at the end, like, you keep thinking you see this little glimmer of hope of him going back to getting back on top of the logs, and then they just keep slamming down in front of him, and he just can't go back. I thought that was really nice. And then also, what I forgot was I really like the editing of some of the chase scenes where you constantly have these, like, the chase scenes take place in very, like, I think the logs were very interesting, but also by the river, not like the lake hut or whatnot. There's a lot of quick clips to their feet, and it's very audible, and kind of like the steps on the stones. And they also do this in the log chasing where there's like, it's very quick shots of his feet. And despite it adds a really good tension in a very simple way, in that you always feel like they're on unsteady footing, and you feel like they're going to fall at any moment. Like, especially by the lake hut, if like the rocks were clearly kind of moist and wet, and I constantly thought someone was just gonna like fall over and slip on the rocks, and that was gonna be like the part like where they lose the thing that was gonna add tension to the chase. But then they don't. But they did that really well, where they also did it in the log chasing, where there's like those quick cuts to his feet, and you feel like he has unsteady footing, and then he does fall in the water. And I just thought that was a really well done with both the chase scenes they had.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that too with the lake hut. The rocks were really audible, and like even Will does kind of trip up a couple times. There's one point where I thought he was just going to tumble down the hill, but then he kind of catches his feet. But yeah, I totally agree. I thought that was nice. And then even like the callbacks to some of that stuff, like obviously in the lake house when he jumps down through, I figure what might be like the bathroom. Right, he just jumps through that little hole in the ground, smashes into the water, and then he's chasing him through, and then that's kind of what happens at the very end of the movie, and that's when Finch goes down. It's in a very like similar, like the way it's shot is very similar and thematically the same. So I agree. I think they did a good job of making, and I just love the environments. Right, I just love how rugged it was. I love the fog. I love just the green and the grays of those scenes. I totally agree with you there.
Big shout outs to British Columbia, where most of this was shot, not actually Alaska.
Our homeland.
When they're flying over the mountains, it's just like the green forest with like the fog rolling over the hills. I'm like, man, I love where I live. This is gorgeous.
Yeah. It's iconic. Yeah.
It was super nice. A lot of it is like the town. A lot of the town shots are in Squamish as well.
Yeah.
And having been to Squamish quite frequently throughout my entire life, it was kind of fun. The first shot of when they get to like the log cabin, in the background, those mountains it's the Chief basically. And I was like, wait a minute, I know that mountain. I know that's not in Alaska.
That's so cool.
It's really cool to see a lot of the scenes of like the town. And I was like, I've been in that spot. I've walked down this road. I know where that alley is. And that was just a really fun experience for me to be like, I know all of these places. I've been there.
Yeah, I wanted to shout that out on neat. On the Wikipedia. They have some of the locations. Yeah, Squamish was, I think, kind of the main one for the town sequences. Yeah. And then Indian Arm outside of Vancouver Island as well. And then Stewart. I've never heard of Stewart, British Columbia. I think it's just a small town somewhere.
It's been disbanded.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's nearby. There's also Britannia Beach.
It's quite a bit up north.
I think it's Britannia Beach, or it might not be beach, but Britannia something. Which is literally on the highway. That's like on the way from Squamish.
Right.
Vancouver, so like a lot of it was shot in that kind of general area.
Yeah, I really appreciated that aspect of it too. More movies should be filmed in BC. I feel honestly,
like a lot of movies are filmed in BC.
Yeah.
I think.
But you can always
see real
have
big
more.
movies
You can always
doing
have
that,
more.
filming in
Get the
Vancouver.
geek person there. We'll be some extras. I mean, I'll do a full acting role. Put me in there.
One day
down.
it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Movies should pay more tax. I don't know. They should pay money to film in BC, and then we get more tax money for the citizens of
Wow.
the citizens of BC, and we
All
can
right.
benefit off it. People
I'm here
come.
for it.
We benefit from tourism. There should be like film tourism where we have to. I don't know.
Topic for another day. What other notes you guys got on this one?
I showed everything that I have.
I have nothing more to add upon this movie that we just watched together. I guess we didn't watch it together. We talked about it together.
We almost did.
Mm-hmm.
I've vacated my notes on the film.
Cool. Trivia time?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Travis,
Favorite part of the
you have some
episode.
trivia?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of it we have the same, but Jonathan Demme considered directing this. That's the guy that did. He's done many things, but he's most notably he directed Silence of the Lambs with Anthony Hopkins. So it kind of makes sense. Another kind of weirdos, killers, mystery thing going on. So he did that. I want to throw this one to you guys. What do you guys would have thought of Harrison Ford in the role as Will Dormer?
Oh man.
Because that
I
he was
think that'd be good.
he was somebody that was
I'd be down.
originally
I'd be into
was
that.
considered. Yeah, it's that. I
I'd
feel like
allow
him and Williams is like a huge different
yeah.
dynamic, right?
What was
Like,
what was a 2002 era film for Harrison Ford? Was that Indiana Jones? I don't know the
no,
years.
that'd be like the tens. No, it'd be like God, 2002. It's weird because I remember from the 80s, the 90s, and the now, but like the 2000s.
Yeah, like I can picture what he would
Oh
be
my
like
God,
in
he
like
looks
Blade Runner era.
Old in 2019.
Wow. Savage.
There's on his Wikipedia, it's just a picture of Ford in 2019, and it's like Matt is an old man.
I haven't seen any of his movies that are around this particular era, but I think he would have been a great fit, honestly.
Yeah, I think it
yeah.
would have been fun. Again, very different
He would have
dynamic.
been a bit younger of a character.
Yeah.
And I think that scene with that the girl in the car would make a little bit more sense, possibly, with the heartthrob that is.
He did do a
Harrison
movie in
Ford.
2002 called K-19, The Widowmaker.
He sure did, and he played Captain Alexei Kostrikov.
Oh,
Volskov, actually.
oh, there was a time where he was not acting much. So there you go. He was doing that. After he saw Memento, producer Steven Soderbergh, who's a big director of his own, knew he had found the perfect director for this film. So there you go. Memento kind of got on this gig. Let's see. According to the script, Dahmer was originally supposed to survive at the end and helped away from the lake house by Elle, but the ending was filmed, but cut as the film's conclusion was ultimately changed. Which I do have to mention that is like. It's like really sudden, the end of this movie. Like he said, she's about to throw the bullet and he's like, don't do it. He dies. She stands up and then just cuts to black. There's no her talking to the cops.
Yeah.
Like, and I know you don't really need that, but it's rare. Like I still feel majority of movies always end with that like 2 to 3 minutes of closure, or just like you have the ending that's the rising action. And then like, just a little bit to bring you down. It literally ends like he's dead. Okay, movie's over. That's it. We're out of here.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of perfect because, like I've mentioned, like I feel like the whole movie is this. It's like on a clock, right? It's building towards the moment when he's gonna fall asleep, and I think it's pretty awesome the way it concludes. That the point he does go to sleep is when he dies, and I think it's perfect that it just ends right there because you kind of have all the information you'd need on Ellie at that point. So I really liked the ending. I think it was kind of the perfect time to say farewell.
I agree with that. I really like the ending, especially like. The man hasn't slept the entire film, and then like the time that he closes his eyes, sleeps forever, and then the film ends. I just thought it was really fitting.
He's at rest fine. So here's a weird thing I just put together now. So in the trivia, I have Christopher Nolan and Hilary Swank share the same birthday, July 30th, but that's the new date of Tenet at the time of this recording.
Ooh.
So that's kind of
birthday gift.
Yeah, it's out on his birthday. So this is Nolan's only modern film post 2000 not to be nominated for any major award. So usually even stuff like Dark Knight, Prestige is always for production or score or something like that. But this got nothing. Another one kind of a little under the radar. This is the first film Christopher Nolan produced.
Do you guys think it should have? Like, I feel like cinematography maybe, but other than that, I don't think it really would be worthy of anything.
I don't think it.
I'd have to.
I can agree with that.
I'd have to I don't think there is anything worthy. I'd have to refresh and look at that year and see if there's anything like weak, and I'd be like, oh, you could take that out. But no, nothing. Like I only one if he was in it more. I think you could try to get like a supporting on for Rob Williams because villains usually kind of thrive in that situation. But I think his kind of lack of screen time hurts him there. But this is the first film Christopher Nolan produced with Warner Brothers. Ever since then, he's only worked with Warner Brothers. He's a big WB guy. Obviously, made them lots of money with Inception and Dark Knight. All his movies make lots of money, but those were the two that really like made them tons of money. And then this is something I want to ask you guys too. It's kind of interesting. As of 2019, well, that's IMDb, but there you go. As of now, this is Christopher Nolan's last rated R film. I can't remember, is Following rated R?
Yes, I think so.
So it's funny that he started off his career, like we talk about like the smaller scope, but then you look at these, like I feel like Memento and even this are a lot, even though the Dark Knight's hail is like, oh, it's this dark, gritty comic book movie, these feel like just a bit more grimier and dark. And it's funny that when he was doing the more like early independent stuff, his movies are rated R, really kind of, like I said, kind of this dark, gritty tone, especially Memento. It's kind of at times a disturbing film. And now he's kind of gone into the bigger scope of things, but it's funny he's never done another rated R movie. And even this movie, the only reason it's rated R is because there's a bunch of F-bombs in it, but it's not like the violence in it isn't that bad. And you really could have cut those F-bombs. So it feels like to me he's not, I'll have to think about following why it's rated R, but it's just like
I can't find if it was
it says rated R. Canadian 14A and then United States R. I don't know.
We're in Canada we always rate things for the most part like a lower curve. So most rated R movies, like a super bad here, was 14A. So it's just in America. Yeah, in America it's most rated R, but it just shows that I think to me he's not really like you look at someone like I was talking about my favorite director Tarantino, everything he does, that's a full-on R. You have to put him in that realm, right? But Nolan, I feel like even his R movies, for the most part, he's not really a guy that uses lots of profanity or sex is not in his movies.
He holds back a lot on stuff as well. Like as we mentioned with the scene where Finch like kills her, like you only see very glimpses of that, and then even I'm thinking of like Inception when Maul like jumps from the building. Spoiler.
It's always always off screen.
Yeah, it's like it's just like I guess you're almost supposed to imagine what that would look like in your head or something, or it's more like here's the character's reaction to what they're seeing, right? So it's interesting.
That is all the trivia I got for Christopher Nolan's Insomnia.
Here's one last one that I thought was kind of interesting. According to the script, Dormer was originally supposed to survive at the end and be helped away from the lake house by Ellie. The ending was filmed but cut as the film's conclusion was ultimately changed. So they filmed an ending where he survived. And in that case, do you think there would have been like some sequence, like the following action, like a debrief where you get to see more of him, or do you still think it would have cut there?
I think they would have showed a little bit of him like getting like
back on the plane or something.
Yeah, or I think it would end with him in a jail cell or something like that. I think he would have admitted still that he did it. So I think that it would have ended with him kind of getting him comeuppance and stuff like that.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that's good that they didn't take that.
I was gonna say, it makes sense that they killed him off, because then it's just so much extra like screen time you'd need to like explain those scenes, and I don't know. I feel like a lot like I wouldn't be as satisfied with the ending if it went that route, because I feel like there'd just be too many unanswered questions, because I'm assuming they wouldn't add like a full 40 minutes of them explaining like the trial and what happens to him and all these other things. So
Insomnia 2.
It's like 13 Reasons Why season 2, where it's just all court cases. There's no actual entertaining.
Robin Williams survived too. I also want to say that Robin Williams, that shot on his body way too long. They could have cut that down. They went to him 4 times where he shot in the water. And he's just like slowly sinking.
Like a jump scare or something. Genie comes out.
And it's just like, at this point he's dead. You don't need to make the body like, oh, they can't find it. Like they'll find eventually. It was just a weird, I think that one's a little too
I was getting vibes that we were going to do the Lord of the Rings thing where it's like Frodo's seeing the faces in the dead marshes and then he like don't stand the line. I thought if Will fell in there, I would have been like, that was ripped from Lord of the Rings.
If you pause,
would have came after this, I guess.
Yeah, if you pause, you can see Robin Williams' character in the 2 towers in one of those little lakes there, so look out for it.
Yeah. I guess the last detail I thought was cool is like Will Dormer. Dormer, his last name is I guess like French, Spanish, even Portuguese. Apparently, that is like means sleep. Dorme in French and other similar things in languages. So
in Russian, it means cold blood killer. No.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. Do you guys want to throw your ratings on this?
I actually have one little fun, just a Nolan classic is that Hap Eckhart, who is played by Martin Donovan. Martin Donovan is also in Tenet, apparently, as Victor.
Oh.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
he's in the trailer. He's like, do you know what the word
Right.
tenant means? Yeah.
I was
yeah,
like,
and
why
stuff
is this
like
guy
that.
familiar? Was he in like Shawshank Redemption too?
He was in
feel like
Hannibal for an episode.
Yeah,
Was
he's
he?
a guy he's a character actor. He's always popping up in a bunch of stuff. Obviously never
was in
broke.
He's
Ant-Man,
done
apparently?
a lot of TV
Yeah,
series.
he is an
He's in
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man.
Oh man, he's the guy in Ant. Oh, it's awful. He's the guy Yellow Jacket kills in the washroom with his little
Oh,
shrink gun,
yes.
and then he squishes him like a bug. That's what I mean.
Oh
He's
my
always getting
gosh.
these roles. So it's funny because in Tenet, other than Michael Caine, there's not many people he's using again in that one. It's kind of known as like his new
Yeah.
class. So it's funny that
Yeah.
he is using, other than Michael Caine, he is using some guy that he worked with.
He's
so
been in a lot of movies. He was also in Agent Cody Banks. So shout out.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
in a lot.
and I have
Very
to say
familiar face.
on the using regular actors after the Dark Knight, there was so many rumors that Robin Williams was going to be. First of all, the Riddler was never in the Dark Knight Rises, but that was the working
Mhm.
rumor that he was in it, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's for sure going to do Robin Williams. He's playing a creepy guy, things like that." And I will suggest, obviously, everyone has busy lives, but if you liked his performance here, watch 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams. He plays a guy. He does like he develops photographs and he gets obsessed with his family. If you think this role is creepy, oh man, he is. It is. That's a role he should have won an Oscar for. So everyone check out 1 Hour Photo. He's fantastic
1
in
hour
it.
photo.
Yeah, it's really good. Even just search it right now in your Google and look at what they did with his hair in that movie. He's a creepy motherfucker. But yeah, for my final thoughts, like I said, enjoyable movie. I really like it. It's one. See, yes, Dylan's reaction.
Oh,
He's
man.
creepy in it. He and he just gets.
Oh yeah, 2002 as well. Look at that.
Yeah, he had a good
Oh,
year.
shit.
Yeah, so I would give this a 7.5, a little higher than 7, but I can't give it the quality of an 8. But I like it. It's a movie I watch kind of, I would say, maybe every 5 years, kind of something like this. I'm like, I'm going to watch all the Nolan movies, but it's not one I go back to. But yeah, 7.5, some enjoyable performances. I think we hit it at the beginning the most. It's the dynamics of this film that make me return to it or have fun talking about it. But yeah, still a good movie. It's kind of the same way I feel about the MCU or Tarantino. I don't really feel they have a bad movie in their repertoire. They're always putting out at least some sort of quality. So
Sweet.
Did you give a rating for the first two movies, Travis?
but Falling I'd have to see again because I've only
Yeah.
seen it twice in my life. Memento, I think I'm kind of like that 8.5, maybe almost
Okay.
9ish.
Yeah.
It's quite strong. That's another guy I wish she would use again as Guy Pearce, talking about actors he would use again, because Guy Pearce, Aldrich Killian, is a guy that like he's not in enough stuff. So yeah,
Kirklin would disagree.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of him. Personally,
wow, I love that movie. Made me love Guy Pearce. He has the
Killian?
hair that I had too, like the when I had it shorter, the bleach blonde hair. But yeah, Memento is such a strong movie.
The
So
Val
kind of
Kilmer thing. Yeah.
yeah, kind of 8.5, 9ish for Memento.
Cool. Yeah, I was curious. I'd probably give this one an 8 out of 10. I really liked it. However, there was a couple things I just had issues with. Just some of the things I already mentioned, but there was some just like happenstance that I found to be a little funny. Like when I feel like every time that he was Will Dormer was going to like someone's house to either check for evidence or whatever, they just like weren't home for whatever reason. It happened with the kid when he goes to like tear this kid's house apart, and it's like the one time the kid shows up is when the cops need him there because they're arresting him, and it was just like, all right.
What's going on?
The scene when he's planting the bullet, and it's just like literally it's a ghost town, like no one is there to hear the gunshot or whatever. So a couple stuff like that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't mention this. The one cop with the mustache, I absolutely hated him in this entire film, and he was just such like a beta character. How like every time he would like say something, and then Will Dormer would be like, "No, blah blah blah, you're doing it like we're doing it this way," and he's just like, "Okay," and he would just like react that way. Like you could see he was visibly like upset, but like it's not like he's holding a grudge to Will Dormer. Like later on in the film, he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, it was nice working with you, like see you, and like it didn't really amount to anything, and I just didn't really understand like his behavior that way. As well as he had this one line, it was the most cringy line I've ever heard in my life, when he's like,
oh yeah,
it's like what do you call a guy with 2 thumbs and likes blowjobs? He's like, this guy. And I was just like, man, that should not have been in the movie. Like
That's the first time I ever heard that joke was in this movie. I mentioned that to Emily because obviously people say that all the time, but the first time I heard that in my life was this film.
I didn't
Yeah,
think
like,
that joke
the origin.
existed like this far in the past.
Yeah, it seems like a very like millennial.
Yeah, and like, what was he trying to get out of the
2012
joke? Like, was he just trying to get some laughs with his boys? Like, it just.
Yeah.
I mean,
think it
his one
worked,
boy,
didn't it?
his one boy gave him a good laugh.
Yeah, and he like pats the other guy in the shoulder or whatever
Oof,
it is.
yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was.
And Al
it was a
Pacino's just
cringy-
like,
cringy
fuck, I want to
laugh.
go to
And
sleep.
then he gives like a friendly push to Ellie and is like, ha, no offense or something.
Yeah, something like that. Like, it was just so, I don't know.
You
For
busy
me, it
later?
didn't
Yeah.
work, and like for the other reasons, I'm gonna give it
It
an 8 out
was,
of 10.
yeah,
An 8 out of 10.
fair enough.
Solid. All right, that will do it for Insomnia. Next up should be Batman Begins, but we've done, or not Batman Begins. What's it called? Batman. Is it called Batman
It's Batman
Begins?
Begins, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Or Beguns, as I misspelt it the other day.
I don't know my
Beguns.
my
The Batman
lore.
Beguns.
The Batman has begun.
Batman Beguns. That's what you call it after you see it. Oh, Batman Beguns. I love Batman Beguns.
Yes. Chronologically, that should be up next, but just like Christopher Nolan, we don't do things chronologically here.
That's
So though
right.
we've done
No.
those in the past, all three Batman movies. We're going to do commentary tracks for them after Tenet, I guess. Sometime is kind of the plan.
Well,
So
with it
next
being
up-
delayed, we might do it now.
Yeah,
But
true.
in the next year, you'll get Batman commentary
next year.
tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to get those as soon as possible, you hit up our Patreon. You can get that. The next episode will be The Prestige, which I'm really
Yes.
excited
Let's
for. A movie that I have never watched from
Oh,
start
yeah.
to
So
finish.
excited.
Yes, I cannot wait.
Such a good film.
Yeah.
So check us out on
Yeah.
all the social medias, and
Mhm.
you know where to find us. Check out the Patreon, all
Oh,
that
yeah.
good stuff. Leave
And
a
I
review-
forgot to
Go ahead.
say too is if you're still with us, we're gonna be throwing up links on our social media. But go vote in Kelowna. We've been nominated for best podcast of Kelowna. So
That's
Taylor's gonna be
right.
mad that.
Hey.
So honestly, you
Mhm.
might have heard at the beginning because I might throw in a quick 30-second, hey, go vote for us, because Taylor's like, make sure you say it. And I'm like, oh, of course. And then I played Last of Us 2 and I got fired up. So but yeah, there'll be links on Twitter and Facebook. So you guys are always asking how to support us if it's on Patreon or if you've already reviewed. That's a big thing, is go give us that, because eventually once we get back in the studio, we can throw a nice little plaque there. We can have the best 2020
That'd be
podcast.
dope.
a big trophy.
Of
Yeah,
Kelowna.
Yeah, and we get cheeseburgers. I don't know. Just help us out
Yeah.
vote. But that's the last thing I have to say.
Cheeseburgers.
Cool. Well, thanks
Yeah.
for tuning in, guys. This was fun. We will see you for episode 4, The Prestige, next time. Later.
Later,
Goodbye.
nerds.
Boom.